We are live. Great. Welcome aboard,
Yes, we
everyone.
are. Hey, I'm going to stream this to my audience too, because it says I
Uh,
can do that. Even while,
yeah, that would be
you know what I'm
great.
saying, dude?
Yeah, I think that will
I'm just going
work.
to put, yeah, I can still do it while we're even going. No one's even on right now. Probably at
No,
the very beginning, it takes a second. So no one's, um, I think that's it.
is it working?
It
I
will
hope it's.
be. It will be. Okay. Well, it's only going to let me do 2 destinations. So maybe I'll do, uh, Drew Gregory Fishing Facebook and my YouTube. There we go.
There we go.
Oh, descriptions required on Facebook. All right, everyone's hopefully getting on now, and at this point,
We're good.
uh,
We still. I'm got a 0 on my screen. So, it was a late announcement. Me and Alex Rode were doing some electro fishing. Hey, what's up, Mike? Welcome in. All my usual suspects will show up here in a minute.
yeah, exactly. And I just went live on mine, so they'll get the announcement and people start popping in. So
There we go. Awesome. All right, guys, let's get it going. We got the one and only Drew Gregory. Won the
what's up,
won the
Greg?
classic from the kayak this year.
Yep.
Kayak designer and now director of the Kayak Fishing Series. Is that
Uh,
right? Is
yeah,
that
you
right?
could Kayak
Kayak
Adventure
Adventure
Series.
Series.
Yeah, but I mean, really, I'm just like I don't even know. I need a title. Maybe you can help me because I'm not the tournament director. Like theoretically, I'm not the tournament director. Amanda Brannon, who's with Real Tournament Management, does that for me, like
Okay.
judging and all that stuff. But I am the one who developed the whole thing and set the rules and the boundaries and the whole format. So I did that part of the director. But anyway, we like to. I've tossed this around. Obviously, I'm the founder of it. I invented this whole thing and got GoPro and the other sponsors to believe in us. But I thought about calling me the like president and founder of fun or just founder of fun at the Kayak Adventure Series because that's really what I want to do. I just want to be there and have fun with everybody and just hang out and have fun. Thanks, Michael. And just like let everyone else handle all the other stuff, right? The logistics and all that and the tournament directing. And I just want to bounce around and just talk fishing and have fun with people and help make memories and get people connected with each other and have a good time. And hey, we'll get into it, I'm sure, this on this show.
Absolutely, we will. I'd like to first start with that sweet trophy you got sitting right there.
Yeah.
Where did you start kayak? How did you get into kayaking? And just I know that's a long story, but uh,
Sure.
just walk us through your introduction to it, and then all the way to winning the
Yeah.
ultimate prize in the sport. And I think
Mhm.
kayak fishing is awesome. I think it brings a lot of people to the sport who would otherwise not have availability. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, the best way to describe my journey in kayak fishing is just simply the fact that I fell in love with fishing rivers and creeks. And if so, essentially, a kayak or a bass boat or any vessel to fish out of is a tool. You need the right tool for the job, the right water, and I'm fishing in rivers and creeks. So, in my Google searching, and it was 2004 when I was kind of like really getting into it after college and I'd moved back from college in with my parents and I needed an outlet, right, to get away. I mean, I love my parents, but I needed some time to get away. I just got off this height of social life, right, in college. I get back home and it's like, oh man, with my parents, like no one's around. I need something to do. So I started fishing the rivers and creeks that my dad fished, when we grew up again, and just kind of like really fell in love with that again. It's funny how when you're a kid, when you do something when you're a kid, you typically will get back to it. You know what I mean? Later in life, you'll eventually circle back. And my parents got me into fishing. I never like stopped fishing, but when I get back from college, I'm bouncing around the rivers and creeks, and then I started doing some searches on the internet about my local rivers and creeks, and noticed that people were starting to use kayaks to, actually fish the rivers and creeks. And I just got done learning in my senior year in college how to whitewater kayak, and I didn't even know much about sit on top kayaks, which was the rage at that point, or becoming the rage, and definitely now is. And I just bought a couple, and then kind of the rest is history because I knew how to paddle, I knew how to fish, and now I'm just I love rivers and it's the best tool. So I just ended up with kayaks because it was the right tool for the job.
which rivers did you grow up fishing?
So in Georgia, on the east side of Atlanta, around Snellville, Stone Mountain, you got the Yellow River, the South River, Alcovey, and then of all the shoal bass rivers south. Once my dad and I heard about shoal bass because we ended up buying 2 kayaks, just cheap ocean kayaks. They're $600 or whatever they were. And I got him one, got me one, and we started floating the rivers, the shoal bass rivers like the Ocmulgee and the Flint, the Chattahoochee above Lake Lanier, the Chattahoochee below Lake Lanier. Just everywhere in Georgia. I joke around, and I didn't meet my wife till I was 35. So like, think about how much time I just fished from basically when I was out of college. And before too, growing up, but it is in college. I had a bass boat, but I took it out once a month or something. It's not like I'm fishing a ton in college. There wasn't a college fishing, stuff like that wasn't happening. So I just fished whatever with my buddies once or twice a month, maybe. And that was about it. So we just fell in love with it even more and started floating all those rivers that I just mentioned and fishing some of the lakes in the area, but mostly the small lakes. My dad and I had a small 14-foot John boat that we carpeted, put the little deck on it, made it like a mini bass boat, and all the smaller kind of lakes, horsepower restriction, electric only lakes in Georgia. So familiar with some of those. Yeah.
I'm very familiar. Actually, I'm from Georgia myself. I just recently moved to Central Florida. Yeah. I went to the University. Where'd you go to school?
I actually went just out of state to Lee University in Tennessee, in Cleveland, Tennessee. So, what's unique about kind of my story is, so I fished Georgia. I fished a lot of Tennessee from knowing that area, going to college there for 4 years.
Yeah.
Then I moved to South Carolina eventually for 5 years, Greenwood, but right near Lake Greenwood and in that area. Sure. And then I moved to North Carolina for 10 years in Charlotte. So I've kind of, you guys watching, if you name a river or lake in anywhere in Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, I've probably fished it. I've probably covered it. And if you name it, river or lake in the U.S., I'm sure I've Google just like satellite image just scouted it. Because I'm just obsessed with the entire watersheds and the ecosystems, and it all applies and it plays, man, to what you guys do on the biologist, the academic community. I have studied and aligned to that stuff very closely and it's helped me win a lot of events, understanding all the species, why they're different, what they like, what they don't like. I did a lot of help with the shoal bass when I was there, with the DNR and the folks from Auburn University that were helping with that, with Georgia DNR. So definitely, it's really cool to be on our show, just because this topic and the conversations we could get into here today. We could go hours and hours. It really is more important than anglers actually realize. If they understood some of the stuff that you guys know very well, it would really help them in certain situations. Just catch more fish.
Lumping me in with academia is very kind of you. I'm just a pond manager. And that's the part. Biologists are very specialized, and I'm really looking forward to the talk. You mentioned you got a biologist coming to the Shoaliepalooza down there.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking very interested in that. I have actually only electrofished shoalies. I've never caught one.
Right. Oh, wow. We got to get you up there to catch your first one officially.
Yeah. So, and actually, I really want to try to pull one on the fly rod.
Yeah, that'd be really cool, man. It's won't be hard. Hopefully we get some, not too much rain, because the rivers can get stained, but it's amazing. They'll get big in small creeks. They'll get real big, and you can go in there and those will clear up obviously quicker. But yeah, speaking of Athens, I have fished the Oconee, right there in town. And during a football game, you can hear the game, and they're playing Tennessee or whoever, and you hear everything. You just sit there catching giant, fish. So there's some good water there in that area too. So is that where you're from in Georgia, like that area, or how'd you end up, I guess, there?
I jumped around. I was born in Atlanta.
Okay.
Grew up around Cumming, Buford area.
Oh, that's where my sister lives. Yeah, her and her husband and my niece and nephew, they're in Cumming. Yep.
No kidding. Yeah.
Yep.
Around those two towns, kind of split my time there, and then did a couple years down at Valdosta State, and then learned about fisheries management and biology from a biologist. Came down and did a talk,
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't even know. I was at that point in my college career that I had to choose a major,
Yep.
and I'm like, if I can major in fish, I'm majoring in fish. And so that's how I got to where I got.
See,
Uh,
I can lump you in with academia. There you go. I mean, you, sounds like you learned it from an accredited institution.
the University of Georgia, I can promise you, you better put your mouthpiece in.
Oh yeah.
It's not a joke over there.
No, no. My
Yeah, they
brother-in-law went there. Brother-in-law Rich Butler, man, he good dude, and hopefully we'll see. Maybe my nephew might be trying to get in there too. He's trying to go to law school and everything, so it's really challenging. But I know how challenging it is, just because I mean, following his journey, and he's super smart, and it's still gonna be super super challenging to get in. So, but
yeah.
lots of good friends and good people over there in Georgia. I actually lived in Athens for a year. I went over there to originally go get my master's degree from Georgia. They actually were one of the first. There's about 4 or 5 schools in the entire country that were offering a master's degree in sports management. They were one of them. But I moved there, and then they lost funding, believe it or not, for that program.
Wow.
And they lost, so they didn't even offer that. So I didn't know how long it would take them to get that back, if ever. Which is funny now because every school has sports management, even undergrad degrees, masters. It's like a normal thing now. But that's shows my age a little bit. But anyway, I ended up going to Georgia State downtown to get because they were one of the other universities that had a master's program in sports management. So
that's cool. My sister went to Georgia State.
Yeah. So did mine. Dude, we're just going to keep bouncing
all
this stuff all day long.
How have we not fished together before?
I know everyone's gonna be like, "You two get a room. We want to hear about shoal bass and everything else." So we'll get to it.
Let's hear about that trophy, man. I mean,
all right, yeah.
I don't want to, make no secrets or anything. I know you're a professional fisherman, but what did you do? What was the difference that made the difference for Drew to hold that piece of hardware?
Well, and I'll give away some secrets and some juice and help people, and hopefully they'll realize that it's the tip of the iceberg with me. I don't know you're the same way. People, your information is where your value is for people, and they can subscribe to your channel and all the stuff you've got going on, and they'll benefit from it immensely. I guarantee you. The same with me. I'll give away some cool little stuff here and nuggets, and then hopefully people will realize when I offer my next session of virtual seminar classes that I do, or 10 people get on here just like you and I share my screen, teach them how to use all the tools and everything, I like how to dissect a body of water super fast and hopefully have success like I do with my style. So I'll tell you guys a little bit about this trophy and how I won this event. So this was one of the most calculated, just strategic tournaments I've ever, most of them I've got a pretty good strategy and game plan, but this one just came together so well because there's a few cool things about this. So first of all, Lake Tenkiller, again, this is great. Going back to the fisheries biology side of this, Lake Tenkiller is unlike any other or most any other lake in Oklahoma. And I don't know if you know this or not, but in the fact that it is naturally in the range of the Neosho smallmouth. Neosho smallmouth, before we knew there was a different strain or potentially could be a whole new species later to be determined, I'm sure. But for right now, just consider a different strain, guys. The Neosho smallmouth do not get big. They get 17 inches max. And I did an episode of Hooked on Wild Waters out there on the Elk River, which actually flows into Grand Lake in Oklahoma. Learned all about those fish. I had Andrew Taylor, Shannon Brewer, other fisheries biologists that got their work in the Southeast. And I know them from the Southeast, but they actually got their degrees from Oklahoma, either Oklahoma State or I think it might have been Oklahoma State. I can't remember. Maybe it was Oklahoma. But anyway, they were on my show and they taught me about, the Neosho smallmouth. And I knew about different species and strain. I grew up in the Southeast, so where we've got all those red eye species that are being described, and the Bartrams and the Coosa, and obviously the shoal bass was during my time there was actually designated a separate species. So I kind of understand what's going on in the black bass world. And so when I went and did that show of episode of Hooked on Wild Waters with them, which you guys can go watch, it still on YouTube. Stetson Blaylock, I believe, was my guest with me, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro friend of mine. So he and I learned about that fish. We learned they really don't get bigger than 17 inches. That's a big one. So it's kind of cool because go back 2 years later when I won. Oh, here we go. This one. this tournament on Grand Lake with Bassmaster on the Elk River that feeds Grand and the Neosho River. Most people, when they're pre-fishing in a tournament, they'll go up the rivers and the creeks. And what do you guys think is going to happen when they catch a smallmouth? I mean, you guys on the comments, you probably are watching, you probably know if you start catching smallmouth, you thinking to yourself, it's only a matter of time until I run into a 19 or 20 or 21. This river's got smallmouth. They got to get big.
Right.
Well, not if you don't understand the biology and that this is a different strain. You can go, and I don't know if anyone like wasted their time doing that or not, but there's a good chance that many people could have, because we all know that in a lot of lakes that smallmouth and largemouth live, a lot of times your smallmouth do love to be in the rivers. They'll be in lakes too, but they love the river. They're a river fish for sure. So I knew not to waste my time there, and I won that one actually on largemouth in the lake. But it brings me to this point of 10 killer, back to 10 killer. So I knew that Lake 10 killer, I don't know what year it was. I think it was like back in the 80s. Someone can correct me. I don't know, 70s, 80s, probably. And the Department of Natural Resources, whatever their Oklahoma fishing game, whatever they're called for Oklahoma, I think they put some smallmouth in the lake. I think there's a big fish kill from what I heard, giant fish kill. So they actually stock smallmouth back in there. Yeah, and I don't know if, to kind of revitalize the population. But I don't know if at that point they even realized or knew the Neosho. I doubt they knew that was a separate, because otherwise they wouldn't have put them in there, because that's not normal for state fisheries. Ever since about the 80s, I don't recall of a lot of state-led transplants of species that aren't native to that area, other than like trout and stripers and things like that, which we can get rid of simply by or trout are taking cold water, like below a dam. We're utilizing that resource below a dam where the water's too cold. It's turned into a not natural cold water fishery. Therefore, the bass aren't going to be there anyway. So we stock the trout. Other than that kind of stuff, striped bass, they just stop stocking them, and eventually they'll go away because they don't reproduce naturally. So. But they don't do that anymore. But then they didn't know that the Neosho was different. And I actually did the research and followed the trails. And we kind of know this. They put in the Tennessee River strain smallmouth, which is essentially your Mississippi River, basically what it is. Right. They get big. Obviously they get really, really big, and different genetics. And so I knew that they would probably be in that river. I mean, I knew they would be there. And I had some friends that had fished the river before. And it's always been on my bucket list. And so I knew they were big ones in the river. I just didn't know if in March, middle of March or late middle March, when it was the 20th and 21st. So I didn't know if the water would be like so cold where it might be a little bit more challenging to get them in the river, because your lakes kind of warm up a little quicker than the rivers, just because they're still water, and moving water takes a little bit longer to warm up. So I was a little bit scared about that situation, about being able, even if they're in there, being able to catch fish in the river as easy as the anglers on the lake might be able to, just because they could find 5 or 10 degree more warm water. We were blessed with an amazing warming trend leading up to that event. I mean, it was really good. So, I mean, people were finding it. And at one point, again, going back to the understanding this fish and rivers, and knowing that there's USGS river gauges all over the country. And some of these river gauges actually have a parameter on there of temperature. And I found one about 4 or 5 river gauges up from the Lake 10 killer, right around the border of Arkansas. And I saw the temperature. So I knew the whole time I'm dialing in like what baits I know I can be throwing, what to get prepared for, what to get rigged for based on that temperature, that data. And I'm tracking if it's up around what level it's at, because the other concern was, will the water be too shallow for me to get up the river? Because here's what's crazy. Our rules state that you must be able to float in and out of an area, and you have to launch from the designated launches, which Horseshoe Bend was the most northern launch on the lake, which is up the river. Horseshoe Bend was our furthest north. So therefore, what I did was I had to figure out how, with my motor, my Torpedo, how shallow I can draft that thing and still go full speed, because some of their riffles, the topography there, it's just a downhill slope like San Francisco streets, man. It's just, it's downhill, just swift and shallow, like pebbles, but swift and shallow. And there's no like big boulders and stuff in order to like ferry your way back and forth up the river to get up. It's in rapids like that. It's just swift and shallow. So I had to make sure I could get So anyway, I just basically dialed in my Torpedo and my Crescent kayak Shoalie, which we'll probably talk about later too. It's a great riverboat. To where I could go 6.7 miles an hour, because we can't get a bigger motor than that. It's not allowed. We have to stick to 3 horsepower or under. So I've got the maximum motor. I've got, 4 or 5 batteries on there, because when you're going full speed, they die a lot quicker, and I had to borrow some. Yeah. So it's super, I guess that's what I mean. Like, it's super strategic. The whole thing was, okay, I got to trim this thing properly. I've got to, once I found that the fish were there in practice, I got to, trim it properly until I can. And then I had to actually paddle with the motor on high, full speed high, just to even get up some of that stuff. So it takes like a lot of just strategy for the whole event. So, and then the fish obviously were there. I found them in pre-fishing. Once they were there, it was just all about making sure I could get to them every day and stay legal. And then of course execute and just catch them. And I was fortunate to do that. So, and came over to win.
Who doesn't know anything about shoal bass, like what lures are you chunking at them? What's the best options?
Yeah, so shoal bass are really cool, guys, because, and if you want, I can even pull up some of those pictures. I can show them with you. I can share my screen probably and do that. But shoal bass, guys, they have giant mouths. Okay, so tell you what, I will share my screen, and my entire screen, and you can just hit the button there, and it'll pop up on the screen.
There we go.
Yep. And then I'll just pull up some pictures here. See if that works. You guys got those?
Yep, I'm seeing it.
All right, cool. Then I guess everybody else is. So as you can see there, they have a giant mouth that most people, feel like they're closest to a small mouth, which, genetically they're closest to an Alabama bass. But there's Dr. Salmons with a big one.
Yeah.
Fisheries biologist that did a lot of the research. And there's the bars that look like a smallmouth.
Yeah.
On that one, the real pretty fish. And so here I am in some of my younger days, just out there, just no shirt, just going at it, man.
Now, if my memory is, it's shot, I'm old too. A Shoalie wasn't even designated its own species till like 2000, right?
I think it was like 97, 98, right around there. Yeah.
Yeah. I was.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I vaguely remember that.
That's right. So they're big fish, and you can see how big their mouth is, like on that photo.
Yeah.
So that's a 7 or maybe 8-inch Z-Man streaks. That's just a giant fluke, basically.
Oh wow. Okay.
Giant weighted fluke. And that's a 7-inch bluegill. That was back when True Tungsten was around, the brand True Tungsten bluegill swim bait. And that fish there, guys, this thing, that one's 7 pounds, 2 ounces, and so is this one. But this one here was 24.25 inches long.
Wow.
So they are not a small fish. So that's
almost a record, isn't it? Didn't the record like 8? The
record is 8. I think it just got the Georgia record's 8.5. I think it just got changed. Well, let me get out of this inception here. The Georgia record is 8.5, I believe, because it used to be 8.3, and someone just broke it over on the middle Chattahoochee. But
oh, really?
Yeah, it was like a couple years ago, and the world record's like 8.12. And I say world. Why is world and Georgia different when they really only live in Georgia? Just because before the population was totally eradicated out of the Apalachicola River below Lake Seminole, below that dam, which is technically Florida, right below that dam.
Yeah,
there were still some there, and as you know, sometimes right below those dams you can get some big ones because they gorge up with the shad and other migratory species. So I'm pretty sure that one was just gorged up fat and was one of the leftovers that still existed, and somebody caught it, and that was the record. So that is what it is. I don't know. Georgia, hopefully we'll get that record back because it rightfully belongs to Georgia. There's only one more small remnant fishable population of shoal bass in Florida, and that's on the Chipola River, which flows into the Apalachicola. Because there's some little small limestone shoals on that river, and they still reproduce naturally and are in that river. But hopefully Georgia will get that back. But basically, guys, they just have bigger mouths. They not quite as big as a largemouth, but because of that big mouth, you can throw big baits, and they, big bass want a big bait anyway. They do. So when not saying you can't put on a little mini max chatterbait or something small and catch them for sure, but the water clarity in, on the Flint, on the Yakmulgee, those two, especially in the middle Chattahoochee, it's a little clearer, but on those, 2 main rivers there that people are going to fish in this Shoaliepalooza event for the Kayak Adventure Series on May 3rd and 4th, you can get away with throwing some really, really big baits and they're going to engulf the whole thing. What's cool is, their scientific name back when they were designated back in 97 and 98 is Micropterus cataractae. And
Yeah.
in the Shoalie kayak, we actually embedded cataractae under the hatch, the front hatch lid.
Oh, nice.
That's pretty cool. It's a little like love letter to the shoal bass. But basically what that means, guys, Micropterus, the cataractae part means like fish of the waterfalls. So this fish, it's only a river fish. It doesn't live in the lakes. You'll never catch them in Lake Seminole or West Point or Lake Lanier, unless it's like a fluke thing in the winter where they've kind of pulled back to winter. Some of them might use some of the part of the lake, the river arm, but you really don't catch them very often in lakes. And they're river fish, and they do live in the shoals. They spawn in the shoals. They love that current. Now they will spread out in other parts of the year. The summer and winter, they actually kind of end up in very similar places, but they kind of just spread out more. And they get on wood in the summer and other sections of the river that aren't, as shoaly and rocky. But generally, once you like in the springtime, they kind of like those swifter shoal sections because that's where they spawn. They spawn in those shoals. And
isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. And,
yeah. That's the only place we saw them with. I've sampled the Flint a few times. The Flint is unique. You're getting most of Georgia has really soft, hardest, no limestone, clay, low productivity. But once you start getting down in that southwest corner of Georgia, it changes. You get limestone. You get a different, way different water quality, way different.
Yes.
And I'm sure that has something to do with it.
Yeah.
We only saw them with the electrofishing equipment in the tight, fast water. They wouldn't be in the pools.
Exactly. Your largemouth or any Alabama bass that have unfortunately gotten put in some of these rivers will take the place of more of those slower sections. But then, like I said, the shoal bass will move back there in the winter or in the like summer. They'll move and you'll catch them on wood, just flipping a jig, just like you would be largemouth fishing. But they do love the shoals. And the only reason, honestly, they spread out is this is actually interesting because in my mind, this is the way I see it. So the water, they spawn in the shoals and they spawn there. From what I know, they are actually, they leave pretty quick. I don't think they even stick around and guard the fry because all the little rocks are there for them to hide. And they pretty much just say, you're on your own. And that's kind of rare for a black bass because usually the females stick around and guard the fry. I can't remember. The males.
Yeah, the males will do that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Male. And then the males were the ones who, they'll like engulf all the fry if a bluegill comes around. So the males for shoal bass, this is from what I've been told, the research, it doesn't look like they stick around at all or very long at all, like to do that. They're just like, you're done. Because, there's all those rocks and little places to hide. And it's kind of like, they just kind of find their way, and it's like, it is what it is at that point. But on a bed in a lake, there's no, you're a little bit more open to, predation, I guess, right there, because it's right there, it's just so open, sun, clear, sandy. But because of the turbidity of rivers and all the rocks and shoals, I guess that's just how they do it. They just leave. So, and they usually spawn a couple times a year, but they can, like in a spring, they can, and I guess that's just sort of God and nature's way of making sure they make it. Cause if they spawn and there's a big flood, then it wouldn't work. Right. So they will stagger a little bit too, from what we've noticed, which is pretty cool. They'll definitely, largemouth are a bigger staggeration, if that's a word, of when they spawn than anything, but still the shoal bass are pretty good at doing that. But so the way I see it is they get in the shoals and when the water, think about it, they're cold-blooded animals. So their metabolism, the water's got to get warm enough to where they can actually attain those rapids and stuff to want to get in that stuff. Cause at some point they're in a pool, they're wintering in a pool. Yeah. And they're either going to go drop back down, like go downstream to the next shoal that they want to be in, or up. And either way, they're not going to drift down or up into swifter water until the temperature gets high enough to where their metabolism is like, okay, we can do this. But the water levels in the spring are higher, which is cool because then it floods the shoals. A lot of the rocks that are it's just super shallow and out of the water are covered now. And there's habitat and there's places for bigger fish to live, and all of the crawfish and all the bait, all the small, aquatic insects, crawfish, anything like that, or small fish, they have had a big long reprieve in that little shallow water from any major predators. So it's kind
Right.
of cool because coming out of that winter, and once that water gets into like those 60s and they start getting into those shoals more, they're there for a couple things, spawning, and then, as we all know, bass load up on gorge before they spawn to have the energy and stuff. And what's cool is, well, guess what hasn't been hammered for a long time, because no shoal bass or no fish, cold-blooded animal, is going to get in that swift water until it's warm enough to get there. So all this, the prey we just talked about, they've just been living a great life without getting much,
Right.
much attack. Well,
That's
now,
exactly what I was thinking.
boom.
Other predators are going to be in different
Mhm.
areas of the river, and it probably gives them just a predatory advantage,
Yeah,
being in that area like that. They just evolved to
yeah,
where they fill a niche.
they do. They do it well, man. It's awesome. And then they go in there, they gorge like crazy, and the water's up, and then they spawn in the shoals, and they stay in the shoals until the water gets low. And let's say like June and July, when it starts to finally drop. Well, now somewhere that was 2 feet deep is like almost dry. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So they're
Yeah.
now the shoal complex, the rapids and all that whole shoal complex cannot support as many shoal bass. So that's when they all disperse. Now there's still going to be deeper pools in that shoal complex, because the river's always going to still have, it's going to suck down to those deepest holes. So I'm sure some of them still stay there, but it just can't support the giant population it could. And what's crazy is it's like the spring, they all come together in some of these best shoal complexes, and it really is like Thursday night in Athens, Georgia, dude. I mean, like at the bars. It's like, I'm serious. It's
Yeah.
crazy how it just
They're just there. And
stack. That's where everyone knows to be. Oh, it's
yeah,
Thursday. Oh, we're all supposed to be here in downtown Athens, or
yeah,
Friday or Saturday night, right? It's crazy. And then, rest of the week we're just going to disperse. Well, that's kind of the way it works with the seasons, and it's pretty cool, man. They're a cool fish. And what's crazy, guys, not only can you use big baits, they love top water, they fight hard, they jump hard. I'm going to say, and go on the record, they don't fight as hard as a smallmouth. I will say that. I've caught them both. They don't jump as high as a smallmouth, and they don't pull quite as hard. But if smallmouth is 1, then I'm going to call shoal bass 1B. I'm going to say smallmouth's 1A and shoal bass is 1B. It's pretty darn close, because
that's a powerful fish.
yeah, because they lack a little bit of the speed. Like, I've never had a problem catching up to a shoal bass on the reel, but on a smallmouth, they start coming at you running. You're like, you can hardly catch up sometimes. So
Right.
that's one way I know they're a little bit not quite as fast, and they don't jump quite as high. Like smallmouth will just leap. But I think the shoal bass make up for it in a couple ways. They obviously have that bigger mouth is pretty cool, because with smallmouth it limits some of the baits you can use. You know what I mean? But you could throw a giant glide bait. You can throw these giant swim baits. And what's unique is, because they're in these shoals and rapids and areas that are just hard to get to, you could pitch into a little plunge pool section so let's say there's a rock that's breaking the current in the middle of some big rapids, and you just have I don't know, probably the size of like 2 basketballs, or put 3 basketballs together, a little triangle like that. And you could have a 5, 6, 7 pound shoal bass sitting in a spot like that in the rapids. Wow. And you pitch in there and you get that bait just to roll right off the rock or right out of that swift current. Again, you don't have much distance to get that bait working and get it. It's got to be an accurate cast. It can't be at the tail end of that little spot. It's got to be right then and working enough time for the fish to see it and sense it and eat it. And it's crazy, because once they hit, because they're in such crazy swift current, it feels like they fight harder, or as hard as a smallmouth.
I was about to say that.
Yeah.
I don't care what kind of fish it is. You put it in current and you've got a completely different beast.
Yeah. Yeah, you really do, man. You really do. And I'm going to try to keep up with these comments too. And if you see anything we need to answer, we'll answer it.
Oh, it's cool, man. Mike just asked, how far north do they exist?
Oh, yeah. So
I don't know.
The farthest north you can catch a shoal bass is probably the northern most section of the Chattahoochee River, or the Chestatee. I can't remember which one. They both kind of flow from north to south. So they both feed Lake Lanier, and they're still shoal bass in both of those way up. But at some point you get around Helen, you get around trout. It's like becomes trout water up there.
It becomes too cold for
So
them.
you can probably, I know you can catch them almost to Helen, and I'm sure
Okay.
some have been caught in Helen. I'm sure, but
Yeah.
in the middle of the summer when it's blazing hot, or the late summer, I'm sure they get all the way up there.
Yeah.
But that's it. They pretty much are just in Georgia. They're native to the ACF basin, the Apalachicola, Chattahoochee, Flint.
Yeah.
That's why they call it the
And
ACF. And
for those
non-native.
who don't know, the Flint River Basin starts around Atlanta Hartsfield Airport
Yep.
and funnels south and goes down down to Lake Blackshear.
Yep. That's right.
Yep.
Yep. So John here is saying that his first shoalie was in 44-degree water, 21 inches. I mean, and he thinks it fights harder than any Tennessee River smallmouth. So
yeah.
There you go. He's giving them the nod, you know.
Absolutely. Changing the subject a little bit, tell me about the kayak you designed.
Yeah. The Shoalie kayak's pretty cool. It obviously is, named after the Shoalie, and it's a little bit of a, homage to that fish and what it means to me and is meant to be in my life. But also, we give proceeds of every sale of that kayak back to the shoal bass. We've been giving these proceeds to the Flint River Keeper. So that's pretty cool. They're a great organization, and being able to support that fish, and they're out there fighting for water quality. They're fighting for the habitat, for, water rights and things like that on our behalf as anglers. So it's a good organization. It's taking care of the shoal bass. So that's pretty cool. And then, but just overall, I mean, it's a cool riverboat. You guys can check it out. I mean, it's crescentkayaks.com. But basically, we designed it to be really good. Obviously, its namesake is the Shoalie, so really good in moving water. Some people have been very surprised at how good it is on flat water. I knew it was going to be good there too, but obviously my love is the rivers, and that's where I take it most often. But once you put that torpedo on it and a motor, it goes 6.7 miles an hour on flat water, and most kayaks cannot go that fast. Most even lake boats that or lake kayaks we call them these days. Can't do that. But basically, it's got a lot of cool features in it that help you become a better angler. Like the rod storage is keeps your rods low and behind you at a low angle, so they're not sticking up. Now, if you want to put a crate and stick them straight up, that's fine. But if you're fishing the river, that's like what you want to avoid. So it's got a lot of cool features like that. One of the other coolest features is the strap. The front handle is a strap. It's a cam strap handle. We kind of made a combination of a handle and a strap. So you got a handle, but it also can extend out. And that's a lot of times when you're fishing wild places and rivers and creeks, let's face it, you're not launching at a boat ramp. You need to lower it down with the strap. So your front handle is a strap to access these wild rivers and creeks. And then a lot of times I'll use it as my wading strap. It's also designed to be a wading strap, so you can put it around your waist with a carabiner, and just a lot of cool little features like that.
Very
that just make it river friendly. And I think people have liked the fact that the catch board for tournaments, the measuring board, there's a recess where it's all the way in the floor, and that your catch board can stay there. You don't have to move it. Every time you want to measure a fish, it just stays right there. And it actually comes with a pad kit on it that has the inches already there. Even if you don't put the catch board in there, you can still just go out and fun fish. Obviously you're not legal for a tournament with that, but it's just, you can see how long the fish are. So a lot of cool things like that we've built into it. And go check out our promo video. And it's been a really, really good selling boat. And it's, I got to tell you, we don't have a giant marketing team. We're a teeny company over there at Crescent.
I'm looking at it right here, Carrollton, Georgia.
It's right there.
The boys over there.
You can, if you want, you can. Let's see here.
I'm getting
dude. We got to get you. You got to get you one of these, man. They're great. Let me try to find. I'm pulling up the tab right now. If you want to share my screen again, I'll show you.
Absolutely.
Let's go. See, there's the line of all the boats.
Yeah.
Crescent. And then this is the Shoalie.
Yeah,
we call it part of our, and I'm designing another one for this line right now. It's our specialized fishing line. And those are the ones that I design. Any of the boats in this specialized fishing line. And it's still, just $15.99. It's not like,
not bad.
That's what I love. Not a bad price point.
I love about fishing, man. I mean, those glitter are $190 million now. Who can afford a boat?
Exactly.
That thing
exactly.
Awesome.
There's 3 different colors to it, and it's just designed to keep everything sleek and inside. We got this new color here this year. It's a new version of a color we had that's kind of got a mix of some slate blue and some black. But basically, you can see there's James Durbecker. He's the owner of Crescent. That's a shoal bass water right there. See that waterfall? So like we said, fish in the waterfalls. They will, and you can click on there, find a dealer, and we got some cool pictures just showing it off. And it's got drag chain shoots if you use the drag chain. You guys can watch that Shoalie walkthrough video. But we're not a big company. We don't have a big marketing team. The fact that this boat sold the way it has is honestly mainly because, I mean, obviously I'm sure, me winning tournaments and promoting it is help, but even still, like, man, I'm just one guy, you know what I mean? I'm not some big team of people out there. We definitely have some guys that are, kind of on I guess a quasi team that love our brand, and we love promoting their stuff, and they fish out of it, and they promote our shops. They maybe have a connection with a dealer, see how that fish, but see that fish finder's in there, by the way. So everything,
look at that, man.
everything's designed to be like low and nothing sticking up on your kayak. Cause in a river, things are going to break. If anything's sticking up, it's going to get busted and hit and get broken off. So, but anyway, I think just the anglers themselves are the ones who are like, man, this is, and then this is like the best boat.
It looks like, if you scroll back up a little bit, it looks like a very unique, if I'm using the right term, keel design.
Yeah, it's pretty flat. It has just a very small amount of, I mean, think about a whitewater kayak. You don't have a lot of like, undulations and stuff like that on the bottom. They're pretty flat, you know what I mean? It's just rounded and curved because they need to be that way so that water can slide underneath them, so you can maneuver in a river really well. Because if you have something that's real super pronounced in the middle here, then when you turn sideways in the current, that current just has more, you're giving it more of a wall to hit, to start pushing you where you don't want to be going, pushing you downstream because you were turning to try to avoid something, right? So if you turn a Shoalie and you lean a little bit downstream like you're supposed to, like a whitewater kayaker does when they turn, left or right, and they're not, perpendicular with the river, then all of a sudden you're gonna let the water slide. You're gonna let the water slide underneath your boat because you're leaning a little bit. You're lifting the side of your boat up a teeny bit, so it doesn't have as much of that straight wall to push on, and the water just more like slides underneath it. And dude, I got some. I mean, trust me, I can pull up anything you want to share on the screen, but I got videos that show that thing off. And how I'll try to find
it. Really great to paddle though too. You don't have to.
It's super good to paddle.
Yeah.
We're gonna get to this question too from Thomas. Thomas Michael. I don't know if it's Thomas or Michael, but let's see. But yeah, you guys go check it out. It's a cool boat. Let's see what he says. What's the feasibility of taking your and other organizations' clout and turning some of these fisheries around where we're losing the native species of bass to the intrusion of the spotted bass? Well, that's a good question. That's a whole nother probably show and a rabbit hole, but I'll tell you this, the short answer is, what we need to do, in terms of these organizations and the clout, we need to convince somehow, and I've tried, Bassmaster, Major League Fishing, any other major fish organization, that's like that. They need to be the ones to realize that, like, yoo-hoo, hello, you guys, the spotted bass and Alabama bass, the Alabama bass was separated out in 2009. We talked about the shoal bass in 1997, 98, 2009. It's been that long since the Alabama bass, which are all of the Coosa, the whole Mobile Basin, the entire Mobile, the Alabama River, which is mostly, we know it, the Coosa, but there's like lots of other rivers, the Warrior, the Cahaba, there's tons of rivers. You can go on and on about how many there are, but all of those are Alabama bass. That's where they belong. We still call them spotted bass. I don't, but the organizations out there like Bassmaster and Major League Fishing, they have tournaments there. They still just call them the wrong name, and there's a big problem with that. And they're the ones who should care the most, because their entire organization, their business relies on this little green and brown fish and keeping the purity of those species. If we don't, this is the coolest, I don't want to go too far into this, but I do want to get this out here because it's a great question. So the intrusion is not really the spotted bass, because Michael's got saying on there, intrusion of spotted bass. The intrusion is really more, it's the Alabama bass. That's the problem. Remember, the ones that are in the Coosa strain, the Alabama River, the Mobile Basin, right? That fish is the problem, not spotted bass per se. Spotted bass is kind of a little bit of a problem, but it all ties together. The problem is because they don't call it by the correct name, people everywhere see them catching and creating this hero fish out of the what they're calling spotted bass. And the Alabama bass is what it is. It's a great fish. I love it. I have nothing wrong with that fish. It's in a lot of water where it naturally lives. It's in a lot of places it shouldn't be. That I'm going to put this in quotes, guys. It quote unquote worked out, sort of worked out for us. Like, put it like this, like Lake Lanier, Lake Hartwell. Okay. They're doing good in there because, and largemouth, and, we could go on and on. So it's Lanier. You can see where they obviously were transplanted. It went from Lake Allatoona, which is part of the Etowah River in Georgia. As you know, it eventually feeds into the Coosa River. So think about it. They took them from the Etowah River or Allatoona, mostly Allatoona, obviously because bass boats, or who did this, and they have live wells. So it probably wasn't somebody wading, fishing the Etowah River. It was Lake Allatoona, most likely. They bring them from Allatoona to Lanier. And that's why the ones on Lanier get big. They're the Alabama bass. So then why I say it, quote, worked out, I'll tell you why it worked out in a way. It worked out because Lake Lanier and Lake Hartwell and lakes that are similar, highland reservoirs like this, that are very, very big recreational lakes, party boats, jet skis, recreation, homes, docks, clear water. It gets clear. It looks pretty. They will never let grass grow. They'll never let anything happen to those lakes for fisheries, negate or bring back not negate, but the trophic upsurge. You got to understand what that is. So the trophic upsurge is your first 10, 15, 20 years, let's say, of a lake. When you flood it and all the about this, Shan, all the wood and all the nutrients that are on that bottom that was never underwater before get instantly, it brings all that life and nutrients to the whole resource, all the lake, all the fish. Think about like a blowdown, guys. When you go fish a lake, the fresh blowdown is the best one, right? When it got the log that's in the river or the lake, it's the freshest one is usually the best for the first. And it's good for like 6 months or whatever, or 9, 10, it could be a year, but the fresher the better, and the older the worse, because the old ones are just a trunk. That's it. There's no more limbs. It's just literally a trunk, and that's it. And eventually it's like nothing. So there's not as much, surface area, not as much areas for bait to hide and aquatic insects to get on and feed and whatnot. So that's the trophic upsurge. So once that's gone, the reality is, and I hate to say this, but all lakes, they're naturally filling in, and they're getting suckier and suckier and suckier over time, just naturally. They're getting silted in by all the sand.
That's a natural process. Yeah,
it is natural.
And in my pond management, I term it new lake effect, just to make it easier. And I tell guys all the time, just train and restock your pond every 10 years, expose the bottom. We can use feeders to keep the carrying capacity high, and we can ride that new lake effect forever. Very rarely do I get guys to take that opinion and use it, but the guys that do always have fantastic fishing, great growth, and
that's right.
It's a very real. What it is, it's all of that. We'll just call it detritus, organic material,
matter,
bottom. That is like fertilizer that drives the phytoplankton bloom. Mm-hmm. You can do a measurement called chlorophyll A, where you dip out a liter of water and you measure how much chlorophyll is in that water, and simply put, the more plankton, the more fish. So when the grasses and the sticks and all the nutrients that were in that soil fade out, like you're talking about, the phytoplankton bloom fades out. Therefore, the carrying capacity of the lake is fading with it. And there's a big misconception on how, people have this idea that older is better in lakes. And it's generally not. It's not.
Like there's some lakes out there who it's pretty cool that do like drawdowns yearly, and it does that effect. Like there's some that I know they do drawdowns more for the floating Sylvania and stuff like that. That's kind of their purpose, is to get rid of some of that, but it actually helps this situation. But anyway, this is like a long explanation, but you can't get around explaining it this way so people understand the whole story. So basically what happens is, for bass fishermen, it worked out because largemouth were it was never going to be that great. And largemouth are not good predators they're not as good at open water feeding on open water bait fish. Now, here's what's crazy. A couple of magical things happen. Herring, bluebacks got put into these lakes too. So now you've turned, because we can never recreate this trophic upsurge, like you're saying, this new lake effect, the only way we can do it and to make the lakes continue to stay good is either grass, you know what I mean? Or, which isn't going to happen in the Hartwells and the Laniers of the world and the Lake Normans and all these places, right, that these fish are in now because they've moved them. Or you can put in a non-native open water bait fish that turns it into this mini ocean, like the herring and obviously some of your shad species are that way out like alewives and stuff like that up north. They're like that kind of, what's the Andromedas? Is that the word I'm thinking? They just swim
that's right.
nonstop. Though you make it a mini ocean, and it actually
Bluebacks
is.
are as well, I believe. Bluebacks.
Yeah, bluebacks. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and I can remember at school, man. Like I can remember when Lanier High School and college, it didn't have bluebacks, and the spotted bass fishing was terrible. It was 1 pounder after 1 pounder after 1 pounder after 1 pounder. And then every once in a while, you'd snag like a 5, 6. And the teachers were like, they were afraid because they didn't know what was going to happen to the fishery. And one example that you can use is because blueback herring are egg eaters, bad nest raiders.
Yeah.
And they went into Lanier. They got into, bucket biologists flipped them in there. And now we've got them. And it was really just kind of pure luck that the spotted bass took off. It's their spawning habitat isn't impacted. But like take white bass. The only white bass in Lanier, there used to be great white bass runs when the dogwood trees were blooming in the rivers up there. You could go just catch white bass till your arms were tired. They're gone. The bluebacks wiped them out. The only white bass you catch out of Lanier are the ones the guys at the DNR stock now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So there was nobody even knew what was going to happen, And it
that's wild.
Kind of luck. Really.
It is luck that exactly. This Alabama bass just happens to be the best of all the bass at this open water bait chasing. See what I'm saying? Like that kind of predator. They're basically they're like the best at it. Yeah. And I know I heard this from somebody somewhere. I could be wrong, but one of the biologists. But I also heard they prefer the species that does prefer to eat other fish more than any other black bass. Now they do eat crawfish and other things too, and especially given if they're in the Coosa River and places that in skinny water creeks and stuff like that. But anyway, someone told me they do prefer, and sometimes I even heard that they potentially spawn a little sooner, and if they spawn sooner, like a week or two old Alabama bass can eat a fry of a largemouth. That's too, see what I'm saying? So they love to eat other fish. They love to eat other fish. They spawn a little sooner, and even those 2-3 week old little guys can eat the fry of. So you can see how quickly and why they took over Lake Norman and the Carolinas over there back. Where I used to live in Charlotte. In 5 years, it's hard to catch a largemouth in Lake Norman now. It's literally that quick. They outcompeted them. And again, we got lucky, and let's just stop while we're ahead, because those lakes are all the lakes. If I could have looked at the whole map of the U.S. and say which lakes could probably use a blueback and a Alabama bass to create this fishery, that it's never going to happen naturally, because largemouth aren't going to ever just all of a sudden start just living all out in the middle of the lakes. And they're more like a structure focused, like they want a big blowdown, they want stuff like that. Now I'm not saying
it's a difference in it's really a pack hunter versus a ambush predator. Two different mentalities, really. They they pack up, they push, they run. They're just in big schools. Not to say you see largemouths will pack up in school, but it's going to be that, like, probably 2 to 5. Right. Those largemouths start getting 7-8 pounds. They're not running in schools. They're finding isolated cover to ambush prey.
Yeah, and it might still be a hump or a point somewhere out under the, could be 20, 30 feet or whatever. They're still out in the middle of the lake somewhere, but they're still relating to that hump or something, or in Lake Fork, it's the standing timber. They're relating to it, and then they're hiding with it, and then hiding behind it, or using it as cover, and then all of a sudden the bait fish, whether it's bluebacks or shad, come by and they get them. They're not just still maybe swimming, all day long. But the Alabama bass literally is skinny and long, and it looks like a missile when you look at them. You can see why they're the best at that. I mean, you can totally see with the way they're built. So we've lucked out. They're in those lakes. The problem is, and this gets into the question that actually how he worded it, that spotted bass are the northern strains. We used to call them northern, Kentucky's northern strain spotted bass.
Mm-hmm.
They get dinky. They're this Ohio River. They are not a big fish at all. So when these big organizations start calling them still continue to call them spotted bass, the problem is people out there don't know which ones are which and which ones aren't because they don't call them by the right thing. So the bucket biologist crew says, man, well, their spotted bass are getting bigger than ours. We need to go move some of them. And maybe they grab actual spotted bass that are by them and move them into a lake that they shouldn't be in, or maybe it is the right one. They're the right one they're trying, or they wanted to get the bigger ones. And the Alabamas either are bad because either you're putting a bunch of runts, because the true spotted bass get like 13, 14, 15 inches. I mean, they can definitely get bigger. It's hard to catch a 17, 18. They're out there, but they're mostly just a bunch of little teeny runts. That's all they are. So you're either moving a bunch of runts, which would no good, right? Or you're moving the Alabama bass, which we haven't talked about the other problem with them. Not only do they just simply outcompete largemouth, they hybridize with every other black bass. As far as we know, they pretty much hybridize with everything else. And the problem with that is this, and I know you're shaking your head because you know what I'm about to say.
Oh, yeah, I know.
When you hybridize, a smallmouth and a Alabama bass, you've lost the genetics of a pure smallmouth because it keeps going because those fish can reproduce as well. They're a 50-50 fish, right? A smallmouth and Alabama. Those two fish there can go spawn with a pure, Alabama or pure smallmouth or whatever it is, or spotted bass. They can, or shoal bass, or they hybridize with anything else. So the problem is, think about the Susquehanna River, how amazing of a smallmouth fishery. Everyone knows that's trophy smallmouth, right? If Alabama bass get to that system, and a better example is the New River in Virginia because it's already happened.
Right.
They've moved into Claytor Lake. People moved them into Claytor, and that's the world-class trophy natural smallmouth fishery. Second oldest river in the world, and some of the best smallmouth fishing on the planet. With some moron has put Alabama bass in there because the organizations and the people leading our sport continue just to let everyone just say spotted bass. Like, I should correct you and everybody. I should correct all my friends every time they post anything and say, they're like, I love spotted bass when they're fishing all these. We should tell Alex Rowe, we should get on him and be like, he catches some giants because they're Alabama bass, but he still calls them spots just because everybody else does. Well, who's going to take a stand?
I'll be sure to bust. I'm going to bust Red's chops. He was with me yesterday at electrofishing.
Bust him.
Yeah, I'll get on him.
Get on everybody because don't you want to be on the right side of history when eventually everyone realizes, like, don't you want to be one of the first ones that started the trend and taught everyone and showed everyone like the truth that's been the truth since 2009 when they did the research? These biologists like you did hard work to study and actually figure out, oh my goodness, this is not a spotted bass. This is something unique and different. It gets way bigger. There's a lot of things that are different about it. It can hybridize with all these other bass. The spotted bass does not, because they live naturally in harmony with largemouth and smallmouth in the entire Mississippi River system.
Right.
Total harmony. Boom. You put in this Alabama and no, it hybridizes. It wrecks.
Yeah, it's bad. And what for our pond people that are watching and know, and again, misinformation that's out there, the way you described how spotted bass outcompete largemouths, they spawn before them and eat their fry before the fry ever even have barely hatched. That's exactly what crappie do to largemouth bass populations in ponds.
Wow.
I never stock crappie in ponds.
Dude,
and watch their heads start spinning around. Well, I've done this and I've done that and I've done this. And I'm like, man, I'm telling you, you don't want crappie in your pond. Don't put them in there. Crappie, crappie, succulent, speckled perch, wherever you're from, wherever you call them. Leave them in the river. Go fishing for them there. Don't move them. And you touched on moving fish. Don't move fish because they're not even considering you're moving parasites and diseases around too. Not are you only impacting the fish population balance, but you're also affecting the fish population health, because when fish hatcheries move fish, it's called a deprivation.
Yeah.
They put them into a tank and they put them with medicine. So all that stuff doesn't get transported.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's big.
Justin's question is up here and I want to touch that. Kayak spotted bass mandatory keep tournaments. I love that idea. And then we got Oliver Nye coming in. He's a little late. That's okay, Oliver. And this ties into what he's got going out in California. He was on electrofishing rig as well the other day.
Yep.
And that brings up another point that you touched on, catch and release, missing information that's been pumped into people's heads, right?
Right.
Our largemouth bass populations are crowded, and a little bit of harvest there will help them. It goes right back to the phytoplankton discussion we just had. The amount of phytoplankton dictates the amount of fish. Well, that means the amount of fish is limited. Yep. So you can't have as many fish in the lake as you want. And part of my job and what I've been doing with Sugar Hill Outdoors Pond is just showing people, look, this is how a bass and a bluegill population interacts together. We stocked 40 bass per acre. If you stock 50 bass per acre, you don't get the same growth rates.
Right.
Okay. It's because the forage supply is limited. So actually what we saw yesterday was all our bass were perfectly healthy. Relative weights, good at 100% or up to 145%. I mean, just really healthy fish. But we touched on it on the live that I went on with Garrett. He was helping me. He's a biologist out of Texas that came and helped me with the job. What we didn't see in our electrofishing survey was what we call intermediate bluegill, that like 3 to 4.5 inch, right? We had lots of 1s and 2s, and we had lots of like 5s to 7 8s, but we had a gap in the forage, right? So even though my bass were weighing properly, I didn't see they're chewing into my forage too hard. So I put a 30 fish, we're pulling 30 bass, about 1.5 pounds out this season. And the other thing that I saw was like, we've been tracking them, we've got them tagged, and all our fish that were originally stocked are over 2 pounds. So we had some fish that are in like that 1.4 pound class. Well, that fish was born last spring. Because I'm getting about 2 pounds growth. I'm getting about 2 pounds growth on my northern bass that are in there. I'm getting about 1.2 average on my Florida bass that are in there. So the northerns are actually outgrowing the Floridas in that pond. And so that 1.4 pound bass I know was last year's spawn, right?
Right.
He grew up about 1.5 pounds in a year. That makes sense. He's following right in between the two parents, right? You're somewhere in there. But I also had 4-inch bass, 5-inch bass, 6-inch bass. Now, where do those bass come from?
Yeah.
No, do you know? I know.
I mean,
they either dragged
the spawn, the late spawn.
We had a fall spawn.
Yeah.
The fish were so healthy, they threw off 2 spawns.
2 spawns.
And that's something that I started telling my guys, like, watch out for that fall spawn. And now I've got Philip Cheek. I'm surprised he's not in here. Maybe Philip's in here. He sends me, he's October with taking pictures of bass on bed last year, right? Yep. So I saw, he was over in South Carolina, and he sent several pictures of bass spawning in the fall, and I saw evidence of a fall spawn in my pond this spring with the electrofishing survey.
Yeah, that's probably what it was.
And that's why those surveys are important, and that's why understanding the biology of the fish is important. Because yes, catch and release is important too in the places that you need to do it. But when you get 2 spawns in one season, we're taking fish out now, right? It balances like a bike. You can wreck in both directions.
Right. That's right. I mean, it's one of those things where we used to keep them, when I was growing up. That's why we fished. My parents are from Texas, and they fish. That's why so many of us, it obviously has turned this catch and release, and Bass has done a great job with that, with getting that message out there. But I agree. I mean, I just don't feel like cleaning them and doing all the work. You know what I mean? But honestly, it's a lot of work.
Well, going back to Dustin's comment, gave me an idea that I've had for a long time. I'll bring it up with you, with Oliver in here. I'll bring it up with him. Okay, there's a program in Georgia called Hunters for the Hungry, and you can donate venison that goes to the homeless to help feed people in need. I'd like to see something like that with our fisheries.
Yeah, that'd be
On
cool.
the lakes that need it, it's not a 5 fish limit. It's as many fish as you can bring,
Right.
and they're not going back in the lake. So what do you do with them? Well, I think that would be a fantastic. It would be hard because they're not all the same size. Like farm raised fish go through a machine and get filleted. You know, there's a lot of. It's just an idea, but I think a lot of our lakes could so much benefit from some harvest.
Yeah, I don't think there's a limit. I could be wrong on this, but I think because it's a non-native fish, the Alabama bass, I don't think there's a limit for them in like the Flint and the places where they are. I don't think there is a limit. I think,
right?
I don't know. Do you know about that? I don't know if I'm correct, but I'm pretty sure that
positive, but I know I'm positive about this. You can tell people, like, people hire me, pay me thousands of dollars to come electrofish their pond. And I say, guys, you've got too many. You've got a 20-acre pond. Go take 400 or 500 1-pounders out of it this year. Go back to next year. How many fish did you keep?
Yeah.
Okay, so change the laws all you want. If your anglers think they need to be throwing them back, you're not going anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
Right. The law is irrelevant if nobody keeps any fish anyway.
Yep.
And I saw that repeatedly over and over, like 95% of the guys. And then what they wanted to do was put it on me. Well, you got the shock boat, go get them out. Not understanding the shock boat doesn't bring all the fish up. It's just a sampling method, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true, man. I mean, it's common sense too. That's the way it works. I mean, so maybe we can get people, doing that, and it'll help grow some bigger fish.
It's just an idea.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably needed in a lot of places, but man, it is definitely hard to do. Now, one thing, the shoal bass was the opposite in some ways. A lot of people would just take way too many because they get a little easy to catch in certain times of the year that we're coming up to, and then it became like, it's kind of like people netting fish, that illegally netting fish in these creeks and places like that, where they're just, what are they? Not a gill net, or maybe it is a gill net I'm talking about.
Gill
Just
netting is
across the
yeah.
entire creek, and it's like, man, now we're just like killing all the forage and craziness like that. So, but anyway,
that's the point that I'm trying to make is each individual fishery is unique.
Yep.
Rubber stamping management plans on top of every lake, catch and release, catch and release, catch and release, catch and release, or gill net it, gill net it, gill net it. Either way, that's bad.
Yeah.
Again, you can wreck it in both directions.
Right.
The truth lies right in the middle.
It does. Yeah, it does, man, for sure. And I'm just excited to see what we can do with our platforms, because that one question was basically saying, like, what can you and your cloud or your organizations do to help spread the word about this Alabama bass? And I think if we just start calling them, if we understand exactly, and we start calling them what they are, then people will understand that there's a difference, and they'll be like, well, why, what's the difference? And I just don't want to see, and it could happen. So the best example, by the way, is the Atlanta, they're downtown Atlanta, the Chattahoochee River below Morgan Falls Dam, when it becomes a warm water fishery. Right there, that's the only place. I was actually fishing with Dr. Salmons on that stretch of river one time for shoal bass, trying to see kind of how many of them are in Atlanta when we were at the peak of trying to learn more about this fish. And I caught a smallmouth down in Atlanta. I was the very first angler to ever catch a smallmouth in the Chattahoochee River.
Never heard of that.
They're there. They're there. This was like 10 years ago. This is 10 years ago. And they are there in numbers, but not there. They're not there anymore. I guess I'm saying because nothing's pure anymore. So now if you go to that section of the Chattahoochee River, think about it. Red eyes were native to that and still live in those creeks. Alabama bass are in there now. Smallmouth are in there now because someone moved in. Shoal bass are native in there. You literally have this. It's no different than the city of Atlanta being just people from all around the world come there, and you got people of different, cultures and different races and ethnicities. That, of course, is now what you have in that river. And that is the future of all of our lakes and rivers. If you keep moving those Alabama bass, that's literally the future. They'll hybridize, because I'd be shocked if anyone could go to that river today, given it's been 10 years later, and we know all those species that hybridize are in there. If you can catch a pure 100% anything other than largemouth, you can still catch probably a pure largemouth since they don't hybridize. but all the other ones do. And when you pick, I mean, you'll see there's pictures of people holding them up, and they're like, and on the American Fisheries Conservation Society, I think I'm saying that right, on their Facebook page, they do is what's that Bass Wednesday?
Yeah,
they will do.
Awesome. I love that.
Oh, it's great. You'll see pictures of people holding up this fish, and it doesn't resemble like any of them.
Yeah.
And they're just all mutts.
Yeah.
That is what the Susquehanna River or the Great Lakes, and we don't know if this Alabama bass can survive and weather that far north and that cold temperature. Hopefully they can't, but likelihood is they probably can. And if they keep moving, bucket biologists moving them up again, because it went from, Coosa River system, Lake Allatoona, Lanier, Hartwell, Norman, and they're in Lake Murray now. Lake Murray largemouth are still holding their own, thank God. But it'll be interesting to see what that lake's like in the future. But then you got Norman and Wiley and all those lakes over there in the Carolinas, and then now Smith Mountain Lake is in trouble, and Claytor Lake, the new river system. So the state of Virginia, go to their website, you'll see they've got this big poster banner like thing saying like, beware, get rid of this fish, like be on the lookout for this fish, and they explain what it is and the differences, so anglers know this is not good. And then, but if it keeps going north, I just can't even imagine a Great Lakes or a Susquehanna River with just mutts, just nothing. We've lost the pure, and the Alabama bass do not get as big as smallmouth bass. So we're basically decreasing the overall size when those two, hybridize together. We're decreasing that overall size of our black bass. So that's why I say, if anyone has anything like a reason to educate the world and their anglers about it, it's Bassmaster and Major League Fishing. What is going on? I mean, I love Bassmaster, dude. Why would they not just have one simple meeting to their anglers and say, hey, you guys all have the reach of the fishing world, the bass fishing world. If you guys and us as an organization, we stop calling them spotted bass when we're fishing in fisheries that have Alabama bass, and we explain what it is and educate people, we can actually like maybe slow this down and maybe stop it completely. Where it is. Because right now, like I said,
with the fish handling they got going over there too.
Well, hey,
we got much better.
Yeah, dude, I got to beef with the fact that if tournament fishing started today, very good and well, nobody it would never cross anyone's mind to use weight and how to score fish to win tournaments. It would never even cross their minds, because length is the better predictor of age, and age is the better predictor of the skill it took to trick that fish. Therefore, length makes the most sense. You can't target fat. Think about it. I catch a fish in a kayak tournament before the spawn, and it's a pound heavier, and all of a sudden I catch it after the spawn. It's the same brain to that fish, the same intelligence to that fish. It took the same amount of, whatever I did to fool it, the same amount of what's the word I'm looking for? The same amount of skill, I guess, to fool that fish before the spawn as it did after, right? I mean, it's the same fish, same brain, but yet I get credit for a pound or two or a pound and a half less if it's a big female, whatever it might be. For some reason afterwards, well, kayak fishing and weight length tournaments, it's what it should be. It's the same brain, the same fish, took the same skill to fool it. Why would we get scored less? You would never, because the other thing, like you're saying, the fish handling, you know how much money is spent in these live release boats and the tanks right there, and keeping them alive and driving them out. And even the bass boat manufacturers having to put in miniature aquariums in these boats. We can keep them alive and drive them all around. And then let's don't even get into the fact of what that could do negatively or whatever to the fishery by doing that. I mean, and creating an artificial fishery for the anglers. Oh, we just got to fish by the boat ramp where all the big tournaments are out of, so they can kind of have this strategy that's not even related to the world and where that fish should actually be living. That's a whole other thing. But all that to say that length should be, but we're never going to go to length in bass boat world, because it's just too entrenched in the history of bass boat fishing, unfortunately. Hopefully they'll go to weigh and release immediately, kind of like the way MLF does one day. But they'll never go to the weight, just because they've got too many records and stuff that rely on that. But length is really the best. It's the best way to do it. And you could have it all live scoring. You could be submitted the pictures just like we do with kayak fishing, and fish go right back in and back to their bed. Anyway,
our pond people, just to come back to that, I mean, he's absolutely correct in that. But we're making the assumption, and we're also talking about rivers and larger lakes. In ponds, when the bass population gets stunted, they stop growing. I've seen 12-year-old 1-pound bass. All right. They won't get bigger than that when they get stacked up. And that's the problem. And we got a good question there. There's not hybrid vigor with the Alabama crosses. No, man. I watched it in Lake Lanier. Lake Lanier, it changed due to the blueback herring introduction and having kind of a more of a palatable open water prey species for those fish to feed on that was highly, highly prolific. Then the Alabama bass changed. I could go to Lake Lanier and catch 1 and 1.5 pound spot Alabamas all day long before they stunted. They did not get any bigger than that in Lake Lanier. So even in 28,000 acre lakes, you can have too many bass.
That's right.
And it's luck that they're that size, because I promise when I was in school, they were like, if these bluebacks get in here, we don't know what's going to happen.
You're right. It is luck. Yep. But you're right. That's exactly what it is. That proves your point that all of a sudden it's the opposite thing happened. You could have taken away a ton of Alabama bass in Lake Lanier and they would have gotten 4 and 5, 6 pounds. You know what I mean? Because then the fours, they would have had that balance.
If you could physically remove that.
If you could do that. But you can't. But what kind of happened in the opposite effect, to prove your point, a bunch of new food source got put in there. And then,
change the dynamics completely.
Right. With the same number of Alabama bass that were in there. And all of a sudden now, and then of course there's more now and it'll balance back out at some point. But I mean, like I said, we've gotten very fortunate, guys, and lucky that and I'm happy about that. It kind of like, I'm kind of in a weird way happy that shoal bass got put by whoever in the Ocmulgee River, because we've flooded a lot of their habitat underneath, all the lakes like Lanier and West Point and Harding and all the ones in Columbus. And I mean, how many good shoals, it's just free flowing, beautiful shoal sections of river that it's just buried now, that shoal bass would be living and using right now if we not just covered it up. Well, so in my mind, it's kind of like, okay, so we kind of like got one back for the shoal bass. They're in the Ocmulgee and that whole system. So, okay, cool. That kind of worked out. You know what I mean? Kind of what should have happened anyway, since we took away so much of their habitat anyway. On this other one, we got to like cut it off now. Alabama bass need to stop. And I love them, dude. I love fishing for them. I won this tournament catching them. I won another Bassmaster on Pickwick catching them, and knowing that in Pickwick, the Tom Bigby waterway actually connects that Alabama, river system to the Tennessee River system, which is a whole crazy other thing too. So I knew that they were going to be in the first creek over from that, you know what I mean? The first biggest creek, if they were going to be anywhere, and I knew they get longer. So I targeted them. So again, learning about fish, understanding which ones live where can help you immensely as a tournament angler. If you just spend the time to understand and care about it, enough to research it.
Well, here's some interesting Lake Lanier biology that I happen to know. Again, just through luck and being at university, there was a biologist that retired from the DNR. He's passed now. His name was Reggie Weaver. But he retired right after I graduated, probably early 2000s, I think. But I was fortunate enough to get to know Reggie. I just went over there and started talking to him. It was Highway 53 office right there where it crosses the lake. He was back there. And Reggie was the last biologist, I guess, they had there long enough to do a mark recapture study at the lake, and he did it on the spot, the Alabamas. And so for anybody who doesn't know what that is, that's where they go take an electrofishing boat out, they tag the fish, they release the fish, and then they go back and try to recapture those fish to get an idea of mortality. And what Reggie discovered was, now what caused this, nobody had the money for, but his mark recapture study proved that 80% of the spotted bass reproduction dies in Lanier. Okay. So you're only getting to a fish past 1 pound in Lake Lanier. That fish is 2 years old and 80% is gone, to give you an idea of how prolific their spawn is. And that's rare. They usually don't die like that. There's something in, maybe it's the gillmag. Gillmag has wiped out the striper population 8 years ago or so in Lanier. It's starting to rebound. We're starting to, the striper coming back, but the striper got wasted in there too not long ago. So what causes that? I don't know. But the point of that whole story is, don't take the bass out of Lake Lanier and go, look how big this fish is. That's a unique variable.
Right.
Take Lake Chatoog up north.
Oh
That
yeah.
has smallies in it.
Yep. Oh, it was such a good. Yeah. They're
Gone.
gone. They're gone.
Gone.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you mentioned that one. That's one of my favorite examples to mention. It's like, hey guys, this happened. This was a native smallmouth lake. They were
Yeah.
there with largemouth living in harmony. All of a sudden, somebody dumped these Alabama bass in there, and I don't even know if you can. It'd be hard pressed to catch a smallmouth in that lake anymore. I think they're gone. I think they're gone, or there's maybe some hybrids or whatever. But they actually just outcompeted them so much where they're just gone. I mean, and that is the future of. And I love that fish. Like I said, Alabama, it's a hard fighting fish. I love it. But would I rather catch it 8, 9, 7, 8, 9, 10 pound largemouth? Yes. Heck yeah, dude. Or would I rather catch a 4, 5, 6, 7 pound smallmouth? Yes. They're better. Would I rather catch a shoal bass that's 4, 5, 6 pounds? Yes. So as great as it is, it's like fourth best in terms of like the most, enjoyable fish to catch, or as big as they get, or what hardest, whatever. Then you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just,
At the end of the day, you don't have the right to change a public lake.
yeah,
It's not yours. It's everyone's.
That's right.
Right. And, I can promise you, if you try to put anything, I don't care what it is, in one of my ponds, you better get bulletproof. You ain't stocking fish in one of my fisheries. I stock fish in my fisheries. Not you, right?
Yeah.
I know how to do it. I'll do it properly. The state guys know how to do their job properly. It's their job. And I preach it. I've been preaching it for the 5 years I've been doing this. Do not stock fish anywhere. Quit being a sissy. Put a fillet knife to them. Have some fish for dinner.
Yeah. Yep, it's true. I mean, look at Asian carp and everything else that's going on.
I've seen guys throwing snake heads back.
Snake heads, yeah. Snake heads.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Chop off his head. Feed a raccoon. I don't care what you do with it.
Yeah.
Don't put it back.
Yep. I mean, unfortunately, you know how it is. Like my point is, it's just, you can't, once you put them in the water like that, you can't control them anymore unless you just kill everything. So so the only thing we can do is just say, I mean, obviously if you catch one of those, sure, snakehead, whatever, throw it on the bank or feed someone like you're saying. They eat great actually. So yeah, the homeless, but we got to just get this through to people, because I want to be, like I said, on the right side of history, is known as someone like, man, that guy seemed like he was a little cuckoo, but in 40 years when someone's watching this video right now, they're gonna be like, oh my God, this guy was trying to tell us to stop doing this. We were gonna lose the purity of the sport. I'd rather be the guy that was trying, because like right now, the Coast Guard, I think it's the Coast Guard. I just learned that through my American Canoe Association certification that I got, that they no longer call it PFDs. We're not calling them PFDs anymore. And they changed it from life vest or life jacket to use the word PFD. We all in the kayak fishing world, everyone says, get your PFD. And I know what it means, and we can still call it that, but I'm going to start using the correct term. They changed it to PFD from life vest because they didn't want people to get the misunderstanding that this will save your life, because it doesn't just simply magically save your life because you have it on. But then the PFD, they didn't understand what that was. And now they officially said we're calling them life vests and life jackets again, so people understand that having them on, that's what it can potentially help do, is save your life. So even though it by itself can't do anything, they may not be able to turn you over and right you up and where you can breathe. You got to, but they wanted to make sure that was important again, that gets out there. So I'm going to call them life jackets and life vests, and people are going to look at me and think, well, this guy's some pro expert. What a moron. He's still calling them life vests like they used to call them 30 years ago or 20 years ago. But the reality is, I'd rather be on the right side, because eventually they're all going to realize that word's going to get trickled and spread, and they're going to realize that's actually that we're supposed to be calling them again. And the same goes with this bass situation. I want to be the one saying Alabama bass like crazy, and then saying spotted bass whenever it is.
I'm doing it too. I've caught myself 3 times already. Yeah, I do the same thing.
It's just so hard. And that's why I say the organizations that have the most to lose by, if this fish, does what they've done at other places, they're the ones that should help, that can quickly actually make this happen, this transition that needs to happen, because we don't call shoal bass red eyes anymore. Well, they were all lumped in with red eyes. The world record red eye was the 8-pound, 13-ounce red eye bass caught. Well, then they realized that, oh man, all the ones that were caught and declared records in the entire ACF basin are actually shoal bass. So now we call them shoal bass. So why can't we do that with this Alabama bass. I don't get it. Like, why can't we do it, when it has such detrimental effects to the future of our sport? I don't like what's the problem? Like, what, just because we've called them spots and that's a cool nickname, we're just going to keep doing it. And
I
so
don't
people
know. Yeah,
move them around, and it's ridiculous, guys. So you guys watch and try to do your best to at least learn which lakes actually have these. If you're catching 3-4 pounders, trust me, it's an Alabama bass. It's not a spotted bass. It's one way you can know, but we've talked about some of the lakes that they are. But anyway, that's our rant. I'll be on Alex Rudd's show tomorrow. I'll give him a hard time too. I'm on his Friday Night Live tomorrow, so chime in.
I'll tune that one in, definitely, man. This has been great. I mean, you are. I am very, very impressed with your knowledge. You are a very well studied individual. That comes from pure drive, and I think that blue trophy that's sitting to your left and my right is. I think, and I love to see it too, because it's going to be guys like you who understand. Like, I'll put it to my guys, and they know, they've listened to me. You will not see me teaching anyone how to win the Bassmaster Classic. Okay. That's not my lane.
Right.
Okay. My lane is fisheries management in small waters, right? I stay in my lane. That's where I'm at. Okay. So the fishing guides from 1987 that think that they can still talk about catch and release all the time or whatever. Okay. You're coming into my lane. Stay over there, talk about fishing. Okay. Stay out of my lane. Don't come over here. You're not going to have any fun over here. It's not going to work out well. And to your point that you brought up earlier, I grew up bass fishing ponds around Georgia. We had 4 ponds around my house, so people let us fish, banging them. I would have loved to have had that kayak at 12. Oh, yeah. You couldn't have given me anything better.
Yeah, I mean, perfect.
But I went to fisheries school and completely, it didn't take it was on quarters back then, so 1 quarter from the beginning of fall to Christmas break. I went from idolizing BASS, Bassmaster, all that stuff, to completely like, all of this is wrong. And I felt betrayed. I felt I lost a love for, I don't even enjoy, and part of it too, I think, is for me personally, I'm not competitive with my fishing, because if you're my client, it's important for you to catch fish, not me to catch fish. How well I fish is irrelevant. The guy paying you. So that's kind of where my frame comes from. And I just got away from the tournaments, stayed away from it, just lost respect for it immediately. Yeah. And I don't want that to happen to bass fishing, because it happened to me. Yeah. So I come on here to tell guys, because when they learn the truth, they're going to feel the same way. I felt that way, right? That's not helping your business model, and I'm trying to help. I really am.
Yeah. When you've got data to back it all up, and you know what you're talking about for sure. This is, like you said, your lane. So, as much as, again, I'm not saying, like, I think, you would probably preach to, if you're going to keep some fish or whatever, there's probably a certain size, whatever, it definitely would kind of hurt any of us out there fishing in tournaments to think of, like, oh my God, that dude just kept a, freaking 8.5, 9-10 pounder. That would, like, there's probably like something, I've never watched any of your stuff and what you recommend, but I've definitely, like, pulling more fish out, like you're saying, we probably have swung too far, combined with the fact that, like we said earlier, the trophic upsurge is gone. The lakes are getting silted in. They're getting suckier and worse and worse and worse. Isn't helping anything. Also, so there's less forage. There's less place for the forage to hide. There's less. So you kind of need to pull more out. So it's kind of done a flip flop,
Because I can use a perfect example. We'll throw Rudd in there. Shout out to Rudd. He came down and did electrofishing surveys. We did 3 different ponds. We did a catfish pond. We did a trophy bluegill pond, and the main pond that I've been doing is the Sugar Hill Outdoors pond that I cover the most, and that's trophy bass. That's what most guys. That's because it piques the interest. That's where you're at. But the trophy bluegill pond yesterday, or day before yesterday, we actually, the guy, he likes to stock trout in the winter, fish for them all winter. Well, we had a 5-fish, 25-pound limit come out of a 1-acre pond. And we took all the big bass out because once their mouth gets like that, they're eating our goal. They're eating our trophy bluegill. So we want the bass in a trophy bluegill pond. A stunted bass population is a trophy bluegill population.
Yeah.
The bass mouths are all the same size. They can't eat a 2-hand size bluegill.
Nope.
Those bluegill are protected. The bluegill population is lowered. So all the natural food is there's more natural food for a lowered bluegill population because as soon as their babies are born, they're cropped by the bass that all have mouths like that, right? And they're safe. You get 5-6 pound fish in a trophy bluegill pond, bye-bye trophy bluegill.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened to him. So we put the shock boat in, we went and pulled those big bass out, which is the inverse opposite of what we're doing 4 miles down the street at the other pond. And I've got guys on here going, those didn't come out of your pond. You're not keeping those out, just because they don't understand.
Right.
We're pushing one way here and then the other way there.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting, man. So, well, I can't wait to get back on with you sometime, man. This is fun.
Yeah.
We could talk for hours and hours.
I'm telling you, let's just cover your Shoaliepalooza real quick. Talk about
Yeah. I mean, the Kayak Adventure Series is coming up. Oliver's on here if he's still on here. I talked to him at the Columbus show and tried to tell him a little bit about Shoaliepalooza and maybe get him on a shoal bass one of these days. But it's a long way away, I know, for him. But he travels around, so maybe we can get him to do it one of these days, if not this year. But it's May 4th and 5th. Shoaliepalooza. It's your chance. It's your excuse to come catch your first shoal bass. I know it's on a bucket list for a lot of people. So
I'm coming, man. I'm
there.
I signed up. I got the vendor things. I'm
ready to be a vendor there. Awesome, man. Yeah. Can't wait. So you guys can meet Shan in person and talk to him, and a lot of other top anglers are going to be there and pros that we've brought in. So you can kind of meet them in person. It's more than just a tournament. It's a whole event. You know what I mean? You've got an opening ceremonies where there's food, music, games, a lot of fun. We're going to have there and hang out and check in registration. And then we have seminars on Friday. So, and definitely I need you to get, maybe be at some of those, and maybe we'll have you at another event where you can speak at one, since we're pretty booked at this one. But then on top of that, on Friday morning after the Bass U brunch, which is our seminar series, anglers fish for half a day on Friday from 3 to 7. And then Saturday fish all day, come back to a big festival that's happening downtown where the city is blocking off city streets, allowing open container. It's going to be a wild time, music, a whole kids zone, a whole city block of kids games and kids zone stuff, bouncy houses, stuff like that. Toyota trucks will be there doing demos. It's going to be a whole activation, and there's going to be, according to the city, they're going to have like 500 to 7,500 people there just from the city and county alone. It's going to be a big fun event, which culminates. The main event of the whole weekend festival is the awards for the tournament in the theater right there in downtown. We go in the theater. Oh, cool. The whole thing is presented by GoPro. The whole Kayak Adventure Series is presented by GoPro. So we go in there. We'll show off some pictures and videos of the anglers' catches from the last couple of days. Nice. Hopefully we got a good clip of pretty much everyone in the top 10 that comes on stage. And then we go to a designated after party location, which is really sweet, dude. There's a secret speakeasy in this town of Thomaston, Georgia, that is going to just blow everyone's mind. I mean, blowing your mind when you walk into this place. Nice. It's hidden, it's secret, and you'll never, dude, you will love it. We will be partying the night away.
Good, man. I'm really
and then
awesome.
It's gonna be great. So go check it out, kayakadventureseries.com. And on Sunday, Dustin Hoy's in the comments. I see him on Sunday, the day after. With the beauty of the Kayak Adventure Series, we end this thing on Saturday. Because of that, we can party the night away, right? Because no one's got to get back to work. It's not Monday the next day. We can celebrate, and this is just as much about the fun as it is the fishing, So we wanted to do that strategically so that Sunday is open for people to do whatever. If you need to sleep in, sleep it off, drive home, that's fine. But we're also having these American Canoe Association classes, which Jeff Little and Dustin Hoy and Russ Snyders, who's another angler who owns both of these. The only other angler owns a championship for Bassmaster and an Angler of the Year for Bassmaster, will be there teaching courses on fishing and paddling and safety, that because we've all gotten certified by the ACA. So Sunday is open, and Billy's going to be there too. I see him in the comments. Sunday's open for those classes. So you can sign up and register for those. It's $110. That's it. And you get, a whole day class with those anglers at a private lake, which is pretty
Really?
cool. Private
Oh,
lake.
look at
It
that.
used to be a golf course pond or golf course lake. It's actually a lake, and so it's pretty cool. People can do that on Sunday, or they could go play golf if they're friends. They all play golf. It's just cool to see this whole thing beginning, on that Thursday at opening ceremonies, what transpires throughout the whole weekend, with just how much fun we're going to have catching fish and having fun on and off the water. So it's going to be cool.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to take from that verbal cue. You probably need to move out. You got the kids. You got a lot of work to do.
I enjoyed it, man. We've been on, hour and 35.
Hour and 30. I think we covered it pretty well, man. And again, I just want to say, Drew, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you. You're a very, very well educated blend of fishermen and biologists, and it's just very impressive. And I think that is why that trophy is sitting right there.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Oliver, I don't know what that last comment means. He says, "Yeah, I am. I am what? You're coming to Shoaliepalooza? You're coming to, you should, dude. You should, man. I know it's late in the game here, but if you don't come this year, we're gonna get you at one of these Kayak Adventure Series tournaments next year. There's 6 in total, so you guys can go check it out."
Oliver invited me out to California. I'm going to try to head out there at the end of the month and fish with him and do a podcast with Oliver from California. Then I'll just come back to Shoaliepalooza. So
there you go.
I'm going coast to coast.
Hey, Alex will be there too at Palooza. So we'll have to.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
That is going to be a wild time. Just getting everyone together. It's going to hopefully be the 6 biggest parties. It's kind of how much fun we have at ICAST or the Bassmaster Classic Expo. When you do see a lot of the other people in this industry that, you love and you're friends with, and kind of the family, the whole fishing industry family. So hopefully these events can sort of become like that. Just the biggest 6 biggest parties of the year. And we just go to one in each region. And eventually Oliver and everyone on the West Coast, we definitely want to hit up, somewhere on the West Coast for one of these tournaments. So I think it'd be fun.
Right on.
All right, man.
All right. I really appreciate it, Drew.
See you guys.
Thanks.